Well, the first thing I'd say to that question is the particular incident to which you refer was handled extremely well, thoroughly professionally by the Barbadian authorities. And I did pass on my thanks to the Prime Minister here for the very efficient service and effective resolution to that particular incident that you referred. But you are correct, we are discussing how we could enhance the services that are provided to UK citizens, particularly tourists who visit here, which are a very important part of the Barbadian economy. And that is attributable not just to the Barbadian government but also to the United Kingdom government as well, which is why we've put in place a whole series of strategies to make sure through, for example, technology that we can enhance the service provision that we're giving UK citizens. We in the UK have our own economic challenges as well, so we have to find mechanisms to reduce the structural deficit that David Cameron's government inherited. The second thing to say is that we have been, and I have personally been, very involved in listening to the concerns of Caribbean countries as it relates to air passenger duty, and I facilitated a meeting between the Caribbean High Commissioners and the relevant Treasury Minister at the back end of last year. You won't be surprised to hear it has arisen in conversations today, and what I've said in response is that what Barbados and other Caribbean countries need to do is to produce evidence that there is actually a direct link between air passenger duty and a fall in tourist numbers. And I haven't been able to see that evidence yet, but if it exists, then we will. The United Kingdom are extremely supportive of the government here in Barbados and in the Eastern Caribbean region as well. There's a lot of coordination that exists between the regional governments and the international community. But if you were to ask me, is there more that can be done? The answer is yes. And one of the things that we've been discussing today is what that yes could be, how there could be more cooperation and coordination, how we can make sure that this part of the Eastern Caribbean is a very difficult place for people in the narcotics industry to operate. And that's not just about interdiction, it's about the judicial system, it's about confiscating drug barons' assets, and it's about changing in legislation to modernise legislation in this part of the Caribbean to make sure that the legislation in place deals with the threats and the problems that the community. It should be a two-way street, and one of the issues that we've discussed is using the very significant and successful diaspora that now lives in the United Kingdom, that originated from Barbados, to drive economic diversification, economic development here. But also what I want to see is Barbadian entrepreneurs exporting to the United Kingdom as well. Not just exporting very good tourist accommodation and tourist facilities, but also in different areas of economic activity as well. But one of the things that I've been very impressed with the government here in the discussions I've had today, particularly as it relates, for example, to renewable energy, is they want to get it right. They want to not make the same mistakes that others have made, to make sure that when the renewable energy investment comes into Barbados, that it's sustainable and it's for the benefit of the maximum number of people who live here. And that means reducing the cost of power to people here, both in terms of domestic residential users but also businesses as well, to make Barbados an even more attractive place for inward investment to come into.
On the later side, when there's a war on, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, he knows his job cut and thrust when you're dealing with conflict. There's several very rice paper and thin ice issues going on at the moment. How's the job?
Well, the job is a very busy one. It's extremely stimulating, but it's also extremely rewarding. And one of the most rewarding things, and one of the issues that I get out of it, is meeting people who are very ambitious, very aspirational for their communities and their countries. And I find that Barbados is no exception to that ambition and aspiration. Prosperity, so deepening economic and trade ties between Barbados and the United Kingdom, trying to discern the economic sectors that will help Barbados economically diversify, as well as persuade UK businesses to invest in Barbados. Secondly, the all-important security aspect, which is facilitating and enabling and encouraging both international and regional cooperation on the important security agenda. And thirdly, consular, so making sure that we have the right policies in place to look after UK citizens, both who live here but also tourists who visit Barbados, and we have put in place a very detailed strategy going forward as to how we can improve the level of service that's being provided to UK citizens.
Do you feel, in terms of the first point, can you expand on that a bit more in terms of how you plan to achieve this?
In terms of the prosperity
Yes.
agenda? Yes, what we've been talking about is, and I can give you a couple of examples of how the United Kingdom and Barbados might work together. And the two particular areas that we've been discussing today are, the first one is renewable energy. So how we can use the expertise that exists in the United Kingdom, not just in terms of the technology transfer, but also in terms of some of the complexities of financing in a sustainable way to make sure that renewable energy is done on a sustainable footing. In addition to that, building some of the government's capacity to put in place the regulatory infrastructure to incentivise and encourage both individuals and companies to invest in this exciting new technology. But secondly, perhaps agriculture, to help with the transfer of agricultural techniques to diversify the crops that are grown here, and potentially and ultimately to provide markets for those crops back in the United Kingdom. But not just for raw materials, but also for added value, so manufacturing and moving agricultural products into, for example, fruit juice or whatever that can then be exported, so the significant amount of the profits are retained here in Barbados.